Hello, my name is Matt, and to those of you who have already been to the channel, welcome back. To those of you who are new to the channel, I just want to say welcome. So those of you who have already seen some of my videos, you will know that I am a big fan of slacklining. So with everyone being home right now, I thought it would be a great idea to show you how you could possibly slackline in your home backyard. From setting up your slackline to taking your first steps, all the way to taking apart the slackline properly so that the next time you go to use it, it's in working condition. So before we get started, I'm just going to give you a brief explanation of what slacklining actually is. Most people compare slacklining to tightrope walking. The way I like to think about slacklining is actually if you were to combine tightrope walking with a trampoline. Yes, a trampoline, believe it or not, is very, very close to what we're going to be doing today, just very skinny. So essentially what a slackline is a 1 to 2 inch wide stretch of nylon or polyester webbing, very similar to a trampoline. Most commonly, you would set up a slackline between two trees, but you can also set up a slackline in between any two strong anchors. So you're probably asking, where do you start? Well, the first place you would start is finding your location. Ideally, you want two trees that are no less than 15 feet apart. For beginners, I would suggest trying to find two trees that aren't too far apart, because the farther apart the trees are, the middle of the slackline is going to have less tension. If the two trees are close, then it's going to be tighter throughout the entire slackline. Another thing you want to make sure of when you're setting up your slackline is that the ground underneath you doesn't have any sharp rocks or jagged edges. Each slackline usually comes with two parts. You have the length of line itself. You can have a 1 inch or a 2 inch wide slack line. I usually suggest the 2 inch lines because it seems a little bit easier to me, but either one works. In addition to the line, you also have your ratchet. This is the tool we use to create tension in the line, and that way it's a little bit easier for us to walk across when we're beginning. It's always good to put the line away properly at the end of every session, because this makes setting up a whole lot easier on this end. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to take your length of line, not your ratchet, the long piece of slack line that makes up the body, and you're going to wrap that around the tree and pull it through the loop. A helpful tip to keep your slack line flat once you start creating tension with the ratchet is at the loop, what you're going to do is you stick your thumb in and you create a V. What this does is it creates an even length on each side as it's coming through that loop, and it comes out in a flat line. If there's too much length on either side, it may come out crooked, and it makes it a little bit harder to walk on. Once you're done with that, you're going to take the slack line and you're going to figure out which side is going to be facing up. Then you're going to take that and you're going to walk the length of the slack line all the way to your second anchor point. Once you get to the second anchor point, you're going to know which side is face up because you've been running your hand along the slack line. So you're going to put that on the ground face up, and you're going to set up your ratchet. It's the same process for the ratchet. You're going to throw it around the tree, you're going to pull it through the loop, and you're going to create that V coming out of the loop. What I usually do when I get to the ratchet side, when I'm throwing it around the tree and I pull the ratchet through the loop, what I'll do is I'll look at the tree that currently has the length of slack line already around it. I'll see about what height I put that wrap around. This way, when you're on the slack line, you're not going downhill or uphill or anything like that. You want it to be a nice flat line. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the face up of the slack line that you put on the ground, slide that through the ratchet, and you're going to pull the extra length through, making sure that the line doesn't twist as you're pulling it through. Once you have all the extra length pulled through the slack line, you're going to create a little bit of tension. That way there's not too much length that's built up in the ratchet itself. Once you have that a little bit taut, you're going to start ratcheting. It doesn't take much to get the line tight. I'm not the biggest guy, and usually I'm able to get it pretty tight to the point where there's not too much swing. Finally, you're going to close the safety on your ratchet, and now's the fun part, taking your first steps. All right, so now we're on to the fun part, taking your first steps on your slackline. What I usually tell everyone is there's 3 golden rules to starting slacklining. Rule number 1 is find your spot. What I mean by find your spot is looking at the anchor you're walking towards on the slack line and finding a little blemish or something that you can pick out and stare at the entire time you are walking on the slack line. This will help block out any distractions like noises or people or things that could take your focus off of what you're doing. All right, so my second golden rule is keeping your feet straight. What happens is a lot of people's first instincts when they start slacklining is they want to have more surface area around the edges of the slack lines. So through their instincts, they put their feet sideways. You don't want to do this. When you keep your feet straight, you have much more control of your balancing using your hips, your shoulders, and your arms. Finally, rule number 3 is to keep your arms up at all times. The reason why you want to keep your arms up at all times is that forces you to use your core, your knees, your shoulders, and your arms to balance out on each side of the slack line. You have more control having your arms out at your sides. You can balance like this as opposed to this, and you're just flopping around. You can almost compare it to how tightrope walkers have those big long poles to help them keep balance as they're walking across the line. Here are some things you don't want to do. You don't want to run. The art of slacklining is all about maintaining control and balancing your body as best you can. The second thing is don't panic. Panicking leads to unnatural movements, and if you find yourself in a situation where you're falling and you panic, you're much more likely to get hurt in that situation. Finally, don't look down. I know your first instinct is going to be look down and see what's underneath you, but you don't want to do that. That's part of the reason why I said you want to find your spot and focus on it, because the more you look down, the more you're going to lose your equilibrium and you're more likely to fall. So you're probably saying, I'm afraid to fall, I'm going to get hurt. Falling properly is just as important as learning to take your first steps, because part of taking your first steps is going to be falling. I can't tell you how many hours I spent getting onto the line, falling, and just getting back up. It's gonna happen nonstop, but I assure you, if you keep with it, you're gonna get better and better, and you're gonna start being able to take one more step every time. That being said, I wanna make sure when you do fall, you fall properly. If you sense that a fall is coming, what you don't want to do is panic and start jerking your body around. What you want to do is be in control and control your fall. What do I mean by that? I mean lowering your body. That means bending your knees. At that point, you're going to look down and see where you're going to land. So let's talk a little bit about some of the drills that you can do to help get better at taking your first steps on the slack line. If you look at what I'm doing here, I have my one foot on the line, and all I'm doing with my hands is very lightly pushing myself using the tree to the left side or the right side based on how I'm balancing. Slowly but surely, you're gonna feel more comfortable and you'll be able to move your hands away from the tree and balance on that one foot. Then you're gonna do the same exact process for the other foot. Once you're comfortable with this, balancing on one foot and then the other, it's all about putting it together. You put one foot down in front of the other, and eventually you're taking your first steps. Finally, the last thing you're going to do is break down the slack line. You're going to open up the ratchet so it's fully extended, and this is going to release the tension that is on the slack line. Once the tension is released, you're going to pull the slack line back through the ratchet itself. Once you've pulled the slack line through the ratchet, what you're going to do is you're going to pull the ratchet and the slack line through their loops and unwrap them from the trees. Now, this is the important part I was telling you about. You always want to take the time to recoil your slack line when you're putting it away. take the extra couple of minutes to coil it properly, and I guarantee you it's gonna make the next time you go to set it up much easier. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you wanna see me do more stuff like this, let me know down in the comments, leave me a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.